Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of the Low Code Cafe, episode 45. Um, for those of you that are new to this webinar, this is something that we organize every week, same day, same hour. And it's an event where we get together with the team, with the community. We have a format that we go over, showing some tips from our support channel, tips and tricks, showing what's coming in the new releases. And the biggest chunk of it will be a hands-on part where we demonstrate how to build various things. There is another event that we are trying that Dale has put in place. It's already started since last Friday, and that is Low Code Campfire, which is strictly purely a community event. So there is no format there, and we invite you to participate, ask help, share techniques. Cool. This event is recorded, so then if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all past 44 sessions, a lot of very good content of various complexity, and people are starting using these videos more and more as training. So it's very, very good content. Also, since they are 1 hour long, Dale is doing a very good job at bookmarking all the various parts of a webinar. So it's easy to navigate inside that 1 hour. You don't have to watch the entire thing. Cool. So the agenda for today is to look at the upcoming releases with Reza, Garrow, our head of product. And then we'll move to the from the trenches part, which tells stories that we learn on our support channel. And finally, we'll have the hands-on part with Dale that will be showing us a technique with using CoBrowsing. If some of you remember, this is actually the first webinar we ever did last year. It was with Dale, showing us how he used Pusher and these co-browsing techniques to implement online games during the pandemic. So it's 45 editions later. We are getting back to where we started from. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the story evolved. Cool. So Reza, I will let you take it from here.
Thanks, Bogdan. Hey, everyone. Just going to give kind of a light update today on what we're working on right now. And next week, I want to start demoing some of the new features and capabilities that we will have coming in 1.14. Just kind of high level, some of the big goodies, the ability to group and organize workflows and entities under namespaces. This will help you organize things, and I think sets the stage as we move into our next kind of big milestone, which is the ability to import and export whole applications, mini applications, and share things with each other. And so being able to group and organize these will then ideally let you select and say, hey, everything under, if you remember the last few weeks, we've done the Remember Me. And so if I wanted to export that and make that capability available, there's some workflows in play, some entities, maybe a page that got modified, and I should be able to just group everything under the namespace of Remember Me or two-factor authentication or something, and export all of those out and make that available to be imported. So be on the kind of lookout, both a useful feature to get in your hands now, and I think something that will set the stage for greater capabilities going forward. The ability to run a workflow as a token, I think this one is going to be a bit of a game changer. A lot of custom logic and functionality is done inside of tokens and Razor and some kind of coding logic today. But with workflows, you have a lot of capability, and the workflows result in something. And you can make those workflows result in just simply a true or a false, and use that inside of your forms, on a page, different places where you are trying to enable conditional logic, things like that. So that one I think is going to be really exciting, and eager to get it in your hands. The page builder, being able to override the CSS at the page or total application / portal level, and being able to manage that right out of Page Builder is coming. The ability to refresh and have dashboards that auto refresh, and you can set the timing interval on those, so you can have kind of the whether it's on a page where things are kind of changing and you're monitoring them, or especially if you think about settings where you're going to have these dashboards up on a big screen where someone's monitoring them, being able to set the refresh interval so they can pull their data regularly. Be interesting as well to see if there's a play with what Dale's going to show today and proactively push data out. And then enhancements to the logging, some security, stabilization, date, time, as well as certifying DNN 991. So a lot of stuff coming, releases taking shape. I think we'll be delivering here in the next couple of weeks. But next week, I'm going to go ahead and do some demos and show you some of the cool stuff that we've got coming your way. That's it for this week.
Great. Let's see if I can share my screen. Good morning. Hello, hello. So welcome to the From the Trenches segment today. I've been really looking forward to this. As Bogdan mentioned, it kind of comes full circle. So it'll be very good, I think. A couple of things that to get started. One, we have a new low-code feature focus up, and I'll make sure and post that link here in just a minute. But this one is all about how you can regenerate a form or a listing or pages within Plantin-App. So if you decide to make some customizations to the default content that gets generated by Plantin-App, and then your changes, you decide that you want to go back to the default content. This quick video shows you how to go about that. The summary, of course, is that if you delete the modules or the pages from your system, and then you do have to hard delete them, remove them from the recycle bin, when you make a change to the entity, they are automatically detected that they're missing and they regenerate. So very easy technique, but if you manage to make mistakes or damage your core generated forms and you want to start over, well, that's the way to go about it. I'd like to ask, we have a special guest today, Craig Anderson, who is the managing partner at Vertical Demand. And Craig actually provided the inspiration for today's content talking about Pusher, because he asked about wanting to implement it in a co-browsing scenario. So good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Dale. How are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us on our weekly webinar.
Happy to be here.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit about the business requirements of what you were trying to get accomplished and just how that led to Plantin-App and Pusher?
Yeah, absolutely. I work consulting for the mortgage space here in the United States, and what we do is provide technical assistance. We either build things or do API work for current systems that either banks or credit unions are using to originate loan applications. And there seems to be a shift going from the loan officers being in the street today, taking loan applications face to face, to the internet. So everybody, if you filled out a loan application lately, you've gone online, and you completed an online application for really any type of loan. It could be insurance or mortgage or a car or boat loan. And what this customer wanted to do was have the ability to, when they have an in-house loan officer, some of these first-time home buyers or folks whose English is not their first language, so they don't understand the mortgage process, they wanted the ability to mirror and kind of walk through the application with the customer in real time. Mm-hmm. So when they did something on their screen, that would change on the customer screen. They'd be able to see the changes, and then they'd be able to move to different screens. So co-browsing in the mortgage industry, we call it co-piloting. But it was just a way for the lender, the bank, the credit union to assist the customer in real time filling out an application.
Cool. So you decided to, you were already active with Plantain App, and so Pusher was kind of your go-to for this?
I was, yes. I've been with, Dean and Sharp for, 10 years now, using Action Form and Action Grid, forever. And, I'm definitely not a programmer. I'm becoming one with the Plantain App and with the Action Form and Action Grid utilities. I'm able to produce things that, normal, high-end coders are able to do, especially in the mortgage industry. And when I saw the game that you did, the Play Texas, I think it was a couple of months ago that you did that. It got me thinking that, that might be a good thing to use as kind of a co-browsing situation. And then, it was just the thought. And then a customer just about a month ago came to me and said, hey, if you can prove you can do this, we want to build out a new online application, but this is the one feature that we absolutely must have. So that's when I started researching it and remembered your gaming application. And then you and I chatted for a couple of times and got it actually working to we feel that it's actually going to be a game changer for them.
Great. So mortgage industry is a lot of personal information, things like that. Did that come into play as you're trying to figure out what to do with your co-pilot, co-browsing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is the biggest. That's where everybody starts, is security. So using, the Plantain app with the encrypt and decrypt, social security numbers, date of birth, all of your personal information is shared through a mortgage application. So what we didn't want to do was push information to Pusher and then have Pusher then, push that information on. We wanted to keep that data secure. So what we did is we did kind of a hybrid where we saved it to the database, encrypted in the database, and then just refreshed the customer's screen. And then on load or on int, we're pulling that data in from the database. So nothing is being pushed. Everything is staying safe and secure in our environment.
That's terrific. It sounds like a very good use case, and we're sure glad that you thought of us to put that together. Any final closing thoughts?
Nope. It is, the fact that I was able to, we're going through the application now and creating that for the customer. There are several, different point of sales, as they call it, on the market today that you can buy, but a lot of them are not customizable. So we're kind of building that out for the customers. Using the text message. There's a lot of things that Plantain app gives us as a customer, then to allow my customers the ability to, provide that customer experience that the mortgage industry needs. So it's a great product, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, thanks for joining us and taking the time to say so this morning. And I hope that I'm going to be revealing a few features that I'm not sure you're using yet in your proof of concept. So hopefully add some value to you too. But we're looking forward to make sure that that's a success for you. So reach out if there's any issues that we can help with.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. So let's see. Moving on today, we'll go ahead and do the low code, hands-on low coding, and we're going to do remote control using these Pusher CoBrowse tokens. And as I mentioned in or as Bogdan mentioned in the email that invited you, if you're interested, you can get a free copy of this to use on one of your instances. And so I'll be posting that link. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and get that out of the way so that I don't forget it. So if you'll get a look on your clipboard, all that plus the other links to our webinars and things on YouTube are all on your clipboard now. Today, I'm going to do a full implementation walkthrough of implementing Pusher, and there are going to be some QR codes coming. So if you want to play along with us, make sure to have your phone ready so that you can scan the screen and be able to interact with these demonstrations. The overview of what I'm going to have a brief overview of Pusher, and then we'll do three things today. We're going to actually set up Pusher, build a chat application, and then we're going to build a CoBrowse application and all that. If we're lucky, we'll get that done in the next 40 minutes. So Pusher is we're using a product called Pusher Channels, and just at a very high level, your application talks to Pusher, and Pusher talks to subscribed browsers. So when you set up an application that you want to be able to do some interactive features using Pusher, one of the first things that we do is the page where your application live or pages will subscribe to a channel on Pusher. And that
sorry to interrupt you. We see the one note, so I'm not sure if that's what you want to see. Want us to see.
Thank you, Bogdan, because that doesn't make any sense at all. Let's see if I can flip that. All right, how about now?
That's good. We see the PowerPoint. Yep.
Good. So your application talks to Pusher. Pusher talks to the channels. Once they're subscribed to Pusher on a particular channel, then any messages that you send along on that channel, the browser gets in the form of a payload. And so the JavaScript that we add using our specialized Pusher tokens will grab those communications from your app, whatever your app is, and cause the browser to react. So that's kind of the big picture overview of how we get into how we interact with Pusher. So let's dive into that. First of all, just a quick go back to the game that I did a year ago. Anyone who has interacted with Plantain App and the DNN Sharp tools may recognize some of what's going on here. This game surface actually consists of 4 or 5 grids that interact with each other. And so, and I have 2 browsers open. You can see I have different dominoes available. But when I click a button on a grid, it's actually refreshing all of the grids involved. So we have a playing surface here, we have a domino rack here, and then over to here we have a chat area. So when I pushed this, it moved the domino up into the playing surface. That's what it appeared to be. But actually, well, all it did is just refresh a bunch of grids after changing the underlying data. So this technique of refreshing grids is the first one that we're going to deal with, and you can get a lot done. Most of the work is in your application, and then the final thing is just do the notification. And so I'll just show you when I flip over here to this other player, his grid looks slightly different. He doesn't have some of the same buttons. He has different dominoes, but in general, it's just it refreshed the game surface so that when a button is clicked, now we see a different interaction. So let's see a little bit about Pusher. If I go into Pusher and the debug console, and we're going to go into this in a little more depth in a minute, but we were actually, both of those browsers that I had going were subscribed to channel Game 17 on Pusher. And every time that we pushed a button, it just sent a payload to Pusher that said, an action happened on Game 17, a play event happened, and the message is that a player moved. And so Pusher sends this payload to every browser that's subscribed to the channel, Game 17, and the browser figures out what to do with it. So the code that's in here on this page is receiving that payload and it knows that it needs to refresh various grids to see the change. It's purely, communication. Again, the work happens all in the app, but the main thing was that we needed the grids to be initialized. So I'm going to close out of that. That's just kind of where you can get to with what I'm about to show you. But we'll spend our time today actually implementing what we said, a chat application and a CoBrowse application. So I've done a very little bit of setup, and I'll show it to you now. Other than that, we're going to build it. One thing I've done, there is an actual module that needs to be installed called Pusher Server. And so I have already installed Pusher Server, but it goes in the install extensions as with normal modules. The other thing that I did is created a couple of pages. I created the Pusher Tokens chat page and the Pusher Tokens CoBrowse page. Everything else we're going to do live now. So the first thing we're going to do is walk through the setup. And this is the document that I just gave you access to. Actually, I gave you access to an entire folder, and the Pusher Server that we mentioned is in there. You can download and install that. Here's the steps. Number one, I always want you to back up your website and your data, because if anything goes wrong, you need a place to go back to. But then we need to install the Pusher Server. So that's the module that I just mentioned. And then you're going to need a Pusher account. So if we go into, and actually that's part of the setup that I've already done too, but you go into Pusher Server and there's a place where you can, pusher.com, the link is in there, and you can sign up for a free plan. And I will just show you that while we're talking about it, you may have questions about price. The pricing for this thing, the sandbox is free. They couldn't have made it any easier for us. That lets you have 200,000 messages and 100 current connections, which for any proof of concept, I would think that would be sufficient. And then, the pricing is very reasonable, $50 or $100 a month. How many messages a day? I mean, it's just a generous plan. I think it's very effective. So price shouldn't be an issue, hopefully. So now let's get started. We're going to go to the Pusher dashboard and create an app, a channel. So the channel is going to be all ours. We're going to go to, in Pusher, we're going to manage our channels, and we're going to create an app. And it provides a unique name. It has to be unique across all of Pusher, but we're going to create LCC 45, Code Café 45 is the name of our app. This is only seen internally, but we're going to have it available. It automatically defaults to everything else is fine. There's a cluster of servers, which is US2, which is fine. We just click Create App. So this gives us an app, LCC 45. And then in a minute, we're going to need the API keys. This is all the secret stuff. And by the way, if you're watching this on video, all this has already changed. So even though it's secret, it doesn't matter anymore. We've created our channel, and let's go on to the next step. We've created a Pusher account. We've created a channel, LCC 45. And now we need to install the Pusher tokens in the namespace. So we have two documents. One, there's the setup tokens, and I'm going to open that up, and we simply grab all of these tokens and go to our Plant an App application. We'll go to tokens, and we'll just paste them in here. And notice there's no Pusher namespace yet. We say import, and it creates a Pusher namespace and puts all those tokens in there. So that's the first step. And then there's also the Pusher core tokens, and I'll explain the difference between those in just a second. So we have another set of tokens, and so I'm going to copy those and paste them also into the tokens environment. So let's open that up and see what we have. Here's all the tokens that are visible, and notice there's a half dozen of them that are called setup. And so as we go on to our next step, it is modify the Pusher setup tokens, and we're going to get all the values from our app keys. So this is the part where we do all of the setup for our Pusher implementation. So LCC 45 is the app name, and so if we go into app. Let me move this out of the way. So we go into app and we say edit, and we're going to call it LCC 45 and save. Whoop, I didn't save. Set up app. LCC 45 and save, and then we'll close, and we're going to just work our way through all of these. So app ID is here, and we're going to provide the app ID. We'll also need to provide the authorization key, which they just call key. Save. Let's see, I seem to have lost connection with Pusher, so I'm going to try with the tokens. So I'm going to try again. So the key, and just make sure that it's there. Okay. So save it and cancel. All right. Demo bug. Well, now it seems to have worked. Okay. So just now it's got me worried. So I'm going to just double check that it's working. So I'm going to use the save and test, and there it is. It's returning my key. All right. So that's auth key. There's a spot where you can set up the cluster, and in this case, the cluster is US2, and US2 is the same thing that's already set up. It's the default. I've only ever used US2, so it's there in case you need to change it, but we're not going to change it. And then the final one is the secret key, and so we go to secret key and save that one as well. So save and test, there's the secret key, and auth key, just verifying what we've got here. Yeah, it was similar enough that I want to make sure I didn't get the wrong keys in the wrong place or things won't work. So we've just worked through doing all the setup, grabbing the app keys and putting them in the setup tokens. And that's really all the hard part. So we will go on now and start defining our app. What we're going to do is a chat form, and it's going to show up here on Pusher Tokens chat page. And it's going to consist of two parts. One is a grid that's going to display all of our chat messages, and then a form where we can add chat messages. And I'm choosing to do the grid first. So I'm going to go in and let Plant and App entities generate some of this stuff for me. So I'm going to create a new entity called chat. Plural of chats, and within that I'm only going to set up two properties. This is going to be the message and the channel. Let both of those stay as text, and we'll make the message be the display name. So we'll save that, and so now we have chat as an entity. And I'm going to open up a window where I can interact with it. So it's generated a new, I'm going to just use this only as behind the scenes. This is not going to be our actual chat application, but I am going to add some new data to it. I'm going to say this is a manual chat. And I'm going to say that the channel is 45. So this, by putting this data in here, this is just going to be used to demonstrate that we've actually got the chat grid wired up correctly. So I'm going to switch back to my empty page and add a grid. The grid we'll drop it on here, and we will manage it. And I'm going to make sure I did a little cheating here. I've got some SQL behind the screen. So we'll do a from scratch setup that is a SQL select. And the select is going to be that we're selecting everything from the app chat table where the channel is equal to whatever channel we want to select out. So you're just going to see the chat from the channel you're interested in. So setting up this parameter, the channel is going to be from the command line or from the URL, query string. So if the channel is provided in the query string, it's going to be used as the parameter. Otherwise, it's going to default to 0. As Reza has been showing in recent videos, it's always important to provide a default for things that are going to blow things up, especially. So the ID column is always an ID when you're dealing with an entity. And we are going to set an order by. We're going to use the created date, which is one of the core properties. We're going to do that descending so that we'll see the most recent messages first. So we'll update that. And so now we'll add fields. And what we want to add is the channel, the created date, and the message. And we'll add those. And I like to see the message first, so I'm going to do that. In the created date, let's format that nicely. So that'll be a date of type. I'm going to include the down to the second about that. And and I'll not make that visible on your phone in case you decide to play along in a little while. We don't need the channel either. So little cosmetic things there, but we can now save and test that out. So let's take a look. Let's go back and look at our page. So we have a grid showing up, but we don't have any data showing up, and that's because we didn't give it a channel. So it's looking at channel 0, and so I'm going to add, let's see, in channel equals 45. And when we look at channel 45, we see our one manual record that's there with the date and time that happened. And so now I'm going to do a couple more configurations with that grid, a little bit of cosmetic stuff. One, I want to, we're not going to need the search in this case, so I'm going to turn off search. And I don't really need it to sync with the URL, so I'm going to move that out of the way. And for the created date, I want to see that in my time because, well, it's all about me. So we refresh that now. We got that search out of the way, and we show it as being 10:30. All right. So we've got our grid that's pulling in our chat messages. So every time a chat message gets added here, then the chat just continues to expand, but the most current message is on the top. So let's now go about building our form. Again, most of this is about building the app, not about the pusher part. The pusher part's the easy and the very last part, so we'll do that. So we're going to have a form, and we'll go to manage form, and it is going to be a blank form. And we're going to add just a few things. First of all, I'm going to call it the chat form. I like to name things. And I also like the labels on the top. So that's preference. And so we're going to add a couple of fields. So first we'll add a text. That's not what I wanted. Let's try again. We'll add a text box. And the text box is going to be called message. And then we're going to add a button. And the button is going to be send chat. So when they enter in a message and then they can click the button, we're going to have a couple of actions on here, and we'll start not a connected form. We wanted actions, and so the first that we're going to do, and again I'm just following along on my cheat sheet, but the first thing that we're going to do is create the record in the chat. and because it's a Plantanet table and has some security associated with it, we need to do it in the context of a user. So we're going to do it in the context of me. The second thing that we're going to do is that we want to create a new chat record. So create new chat, and the things that we want to pass in, the message is going to be equal to whatever the message is that they typed. So the message variable from the screen, the channel is going to be the same that we're using all along. It's going to be the get channel with a default of 0, and we don't need to output anything. So these two things are going to actually create the data, and then everything else is just going to be cosmetic. So let's see how that works. We'll save this and go back. And so now we have a chat form. So we can say, actually, I want to stay on channel 45 here. We lost that in the process. So we'll say first form chat and send chat. And as it refreshes, we now see that the data has been added to the grid and the grid displays it. So now we're almost to the spot where we need to start talking about pusher. I'm going to duplicate this. And so now we've got 2 going on. And so somebody does a chat, it says browser 1. On their browser, the chat shows up, but on the other one, this is the definition of the problem, right? This grid needs to show the data, but it doesn't know to do anything. If we refreshed it, it's going to show up, but it doesn't know to refresh. So that's what we're going to use pusher for, refreshing the browser. So we really have everything set up that we need, except now we need to implement pusher. So I'm going to go back to our documentation and talk about, we just work our way through the document. The first is page configuration. So every page where pusher interactions are going to occur need to be subscribed to pusher, because otherwise they don't know that something has happened on pusher. So we'll subscribe the page. I've got an example here where we're going to subscribe to channel and the same channel that we have been working with. So this needs to go into a text block. So I'm going to add an HTML to the top of my page, and I'll just put it up here somewhere. And we will make a couple of setting changes. So I'm going to call it pusher setup. And we need to be able to replace tokens and update. So that gets us a place that we can put in some HTML. And I'm going to edit the content, and in the source, paste that subscription. Now this, behind the scenes, you can look at all this. It's not encrypted or hidden from you in any way, but subscribe page is a bunch of JavaScript that says, subscribe this page to the pusher channel called whatever it is from the token. So we save that and refresh. So having done nothing more than that, let's take a look at what happens on pusher. If we go into the debug console, and now it's active, so we're actually going to have to refresh the page, but we'll refresh the page and look at the console, and now we see that we have a connection that got made on the website on channel 0, and channel 0 is occupied. Well, there's the first problem. I didn't really want, in my demonstration, we need to stay on channel 45, so I'm going to go to that. And then I want to make sure we'll refresh this one as well. So both browsers are now on channel 45. And so now you can see that we have, you can see the activity where we have one browser subscribed to channel 45 and another browser subscribed to channel 45. If we close that browser, we would see that the connection would be disconnected. So long as they stay on that page, they're connected and are hearing events from pusher. So we've got the page subscribed. As we go on to the next step, what we want to do is to do a data source refresh. So this like all of the things, almost all the things you're going to see in this pusher document is a two-part process where you have to set up an initialization script, and then at the appropriate time you send a notification through notify page. So what we're going to do is we're going to subscribe that grid to something called all grids. This is a name I made up. It doesn't really matter what the all grids name is. It's just giving that grid connection to, it's saying that it is subscribed to the all grids notification. So we'll go into the grid, and so I forgot to name that, so I'm going to change its name to chat grid. But we open up this section, go to the advanced UI settings, and in the init JavaScript, we drop in the subscribe grid. And we're saying subscribe this grid to the action all grids. So it now knows that when something comes through for all grids, it knows that it's going to get refreshed. So that's all we do on the grid. And so we refresh that, and then we need, so that takes care of the initialization. This grid is ready to be refreshed whenever. But now we need to tie the refresh action to send chat. When they push the button, we want this grid to be refreshed here and the one on other browsers to be refreshed as well. So we'll go in and modify the chat form, modify the button in a couple of ways that are really quite easy. We are going to do an action called execute token, which just allows us to send a token activation. And I like to document, so we'll say that this is going to force the refresh of the grid for the channel. But the refresh action, and I've again happened to have it ready to go on the clipboard here from the document, but we are going to do a token expression that is using the notify page token. We're passing in the channel that we want to get notified. So you could have people on 50 different channels, but only the people on channel 45 are going to get notified. We're doing a notify event, and we're passing in the action of all grids. So any grid with that's been subscribed to the all grids that we just did is going to get notified. We're also going to do another couple of things here, because just to keep our workspace clean, I'm going to do another token and put a blank into message. So when they push the button, it's going to notify everybody to refresh. But then on my current browser, it's just going to clean up message to be blank. And then the last thing I'm going to do is an AJAX. My form isn't going to refresh even though I push the button, because we'll refresh the form by AJAX. So with that much done, a couple of extra bit of code, and I have to, because I made programming changes, I'm going to have to refresh this one as well. But now watch what happens when I say hello world and say send chat. My grid refreshes here, which is what we expected, but we go over to our other browser and it's also refreshed here. So pusher, if we look in the console, we can see that a message happened. We sent a message on channel 45, the event was notify, and it sent on all grids. So the button sent this message, and then this message ended up going to the grid, forcing that to refresh. So let's take this just one or two steps farther before we go on to our CoBrowse, and that is that it was silent, and I can't stand the silence. So we're going to go into our chat form and make a couple of modifications that will make that so we get some sound to go with it when the button gets pushed and people get notified. So I'm going to add a static text field, and this is going to be called audio. And the content of this, again, it's a copy and paste, but I'll explain it. we are setting up an audio. This is a standard HTML tag. It's going to be called chat audio, and it's going, when chat audio gets activated, it's going to play this sound. And so I'm going to go and just show you that this sound is set up on my website, and it's got a definition of what it is. So the key here is that the ID, if I send an ID of chat, it checks to see if there's a chat audio, and if it is, it'll play it. So in a little bit, we're going to send an activation for chat. And then the other thing is that I've set up a paragraph tag called chat message. So if we send a message called chat, and there's a paragraph called chat message, it's going to send that, set that message up inside the paragraph tags. So this is all the setup for where is this, how is this audio going to play, and where does the message exist. So now we just need to modify our button to actually do the work. So we're going to do that as another execute token. So I'm just going to copy one, and we'll configure it. And we're not going to do that notification again, but what we want to do is we will look at how to play a sound in the document. And this is telling us that here's there has to be an HTML element that's going to receive that sound. And then how do you trigger the audio? Well, we can do it, for example, with a notification like this. So I'm going to copy that and paste it. So we're doing a notify the page on whatever channel that's being played. We want to notify it to do an action called chat. And the message is, and I'm just going to, instead of passing in a constant of new chat, I'm actually going to pass in the message, since we're processing the message from the field. So the message will also appear up at the top of the screen as message. And that's it. We're with one notification, we're going to get sound, and it's going to show the message up at the top. So with audio and send chat. And so now we see with audio showing up here. Obviously, I'm not much at graphics. That's very small, but it's showing up here. And we see it for our, actually, I didn't refresh this, so we didn't get to see it. So I'll say response. And so it's showing up here, and the grid is refreshing, and it's showing up here, and the grid is refreshing. So if you're interested in playing along, we have a QR code here that you can scan with your camera, and hopefully somebody will scan that and get that into their phone, and you should be able to go into message and type a message, and it will show up for us here. So that in 20 minutes is a fully functioning chat application, and it works with all of the different channels. Thank you. So if you put everybody on the same channel, like 0, you don't provide any default for channel, then it's a big group chat. If you want to take somebody to the side, your channel could be a GUID, and that you pass to them however you do, so it's only to them. And so that would be, for example, between a support representative and a user, or just, but you could make it be a very private channel. So, or you put 5 people on the channel, however. Again, behind the scenes, if we look at the chat messages, we see that as you're pushing the button, it's sending a message to pusher. The action that it's doing is chat, and the message is very cool. So, all right. So now the challenge is, in 7 minutes, can we do a CoBrowse application? So yes, I am playing a risky game. I trust each and every one of you, but yeah. Okay, so here we go. I am going to switch over to our CoBrowse, our empty CoBrowse page, and we will talk about co-browsing. So we do not need chats anymore, and we'll just stick with So for our CoBrowse application, we're going to use action form. And in the same way as we did before, I'm just going to set it all up and then we'll add co-browsing to it. So on manage form, I am going, instead of using a blank form, I'm going to use the standard contact form. This sets us up with 6 fields. Most of you have seen this before, and a send now button. So this gets us largely going, and I'm going to say that this is the co-browse. And again, I can't stand that I got to have my labels on the top. So we save and take a look at what we've got. And so we have just a setup form. So the co-browsing is done in the same way. We got to we still have to do the setup. So we are going to subscribe the page to a pusher channel, and I'm going to use the same channel code that we had before. So we go into settings and say that this is replace tokens, and to give things names. So this is the pusher setup HTML, and we'll go back and find the pusher, the page configuration code. And here's that example, subscribing the page. We edit the content and say pusher subscribe. So we're subscribing to channel, default channel 0 or whatever channel we go to. And so we'll save that and it will start to subscribe. We don't need to do anything more than that. So as we fill in this form, we want to be able to share this with our co-browsers, whoever else has access to this channel. So, and they'll be able to help then back and forth. So what we're going to do is, whoops, that's not the button I wanted to use. I want to do the CoBrowse form. And in the setup of this, it's shown here, form integration. We have a setup code. So here's the subscribe form fields action, and that goes into the advanced settings initialization script. And in this one, we actually need a module ID. So I'm going to save and exit this so that I can edit this the other way and find the module ID. So I'm going to edit full screen in a new tab. When we do it that way, we see the module ID is 801. So I'm going to grab that, and I just have to set my module ID here, 801. So this is subscribing the form to the to be able to do fields, and we're giving it an action of set form fields. So that is the subscribe part of this. And then what we're going to do is to add a button, and we're going to call it CoBrowse. And the actions that are going to be on CoBrowse is very similar to what you've seen before. We're going to need to execute a token. The first thing that we need to do is to build a field list. So this is the list of fields that are going to get transferred when you do when you send the notification. What fields do you want to send? So I've broken this into 2 parts. It doesn't have to be broken into 2 parts, but I'm going to do it that way. So we're building a thing called field list, a token called field list, and we're passing first name and whatever the value of first name is, last name and whatever the value of last name is. This expression obviously was set up, and it's designed to work particularly with our contact form. Then we, once we have that built, we need to actually send the notification. And so the expression to send the notification we can get out of our examples here, wherever that is. Here it is. So here's an example. And so we'll paste it in here, and it says that we're notifying the page. Everybody on whatever the channel is, we're doing a notify. We're doing set form fields is the action we're doing, and then we're passing field list. Now I'll point out that when we built field list, it's very close to JSON, but it's a special JSON. So watch the syntax according to the documentation. And then finally, Ajax so that it doesn't refresh our form. So now we have a CoBrowse button. It does three things. It sets up the field list. It actually sends the fields to Pusher. And because we subscribe the form to Pusher, the form is going to refresh. So we'll save that and refresh. And so now we have a CoBrowse button. I am going to duplicate this. And so when I type here, and we do have one thing I must change, and that is that in the button, this can't be doing validation because all these fields are required. So we'll refresh this again. And I know we're right at time, but I want to prove it works. So we say Dale, and we push CoBrowse. And when we look at the other screen, we now see that that's filled in. In the same way, if you want to play along, you can scan the QR code. So I know we've made it to the end of our hour. Bogdan has popped in, and I see he's ready to put out the hook and drag me off the stage. Yeah. There are other features that are in this document. You know how to do audio. There's also the ability to direct people to a different URL. And there's also some code in there that makes it so that as you type in this Pusher CoBrowse scenario, that those fields refresh immediately, even without pushing the CoBrowse button. And that's taking advantage of a technique we talked on low-code feature focus a few weeks ago. All righty, that's we made it barely.
Very cool. Thanks a lot, Dale. It was fun. You took quite a few risks there.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, I was hoping that nobody would start with heckling me from the crowd.
Yeah. So we have very, very cool techniques. I would have liked that we had some time to brainstorm, like what else could you do with this, you know, from chat, of course, to maybe enforcing a single tab for a user, you know, to prevent them using multiple tabs on the same apps. You know? So there's a lot of things that you can.
I absolutely agree. There's a lot of directions that we can go with that, and so I think if there's interest, whether it's maybe around Campfire, but I'd be happy to come back and do a part two. Well, what can we do with this? And
yeah, I think it can have so many applications. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. Another great episode, another great techniques, cool things that you can do with Plant&App. And we'll be seeing each other next week. Also, there is this feedback form. Please make sure to share it with us. It helps us improve with every edition. Thanks, and see you next week.